I'll show you now how this digital operational resilience strategy document looks like and how to fill it out to be compliant with the DORA EU cybersecurity regulation. Now, this document is important because it's mandatory according to DORA Article 6, but it's also crucial for a company to have such a document to define precisely how it plans to implement all the cybersecurity and business continuity and resilience measures, and also how to control them, how to measure them. All of these things are defined in this strategy. Okay, I'm showing you now the digital operational resilience strategy template from Advisera's DORA documentation toolkit. So when you take a look at this first page, you see that here you have some general information, title of the document, code, version, date of the version, author, approver, these kind of things. On the second page, typically we have the change history, so basically all the changes that you've made throughout different dates. And then of course the table of contents, and then as you scroll down you will start with the main part of the document. Now I'll come back to this main part in a minute. Let me first describe you the structure of this document by following this table of contents. So typically in the section 1, purpose, scope and users, you define who is this document intended for, what does it cover, and what is its purpose, right? So what do you try to achieve with this kind of a document? Reference document, this is where you refer to specific articles of DORA, but also to cybersecurity and business continuity standards like ISO 27001, ISO 22301 and so on. And then section 3 defines the overall, let's say, direction of digital operational resilience. So section 3.1 defines how this resilience strategy actually supports the overall business strategy of the company. Section 3.2 speaks about what are the risk tolerance levels and impact tolerance for ICT disruptions. And then 3.3 sets the information security objectives generally for the whole company. Section 4 is about what is this strategy based upon. So first of all, you need to analyze in 4.1 the current resilience situation in a company. 4.2, you are actually describing your ICT, so IT infrastructure, and also the planned changes to this infrastructure. In 4.3, you define how you're going to manage the risks, how you're going to implement these security controls. And 4.4 is business impact analysis. So basically how you're going to conclude what are your recovery time objectives, recovery point objectives, and so on. Then in section 5, you define how you're going to manage incidents and crisis. And typically this is where you refer to other documents like crisis management plan, business continuity plan, incident response plan, this kind of thing. Section 6 is about what is the strategy for recovery for major incidents. And then you define this strategy for each and every aspect. So 6.1 is about defining the strategy on how you're going to recover physical locations, so primary, secondary locations, these kind of things. 6.2, suppliers and outsourcing partnering strategy. This is basically where you define your exit strategy when it comes to specific suppliers. And of course, you can also create this exit strategy as a separate document, and then you refer in 6.2 to this external document. 6.3 is how you're going to recover applications or databases if in case of a disruption, how you're going to recover overall data. So typically this is through the backup, and you refer here to your backup policy. 6.5, strategy for avoiding single point of failure. So whenever you have identified single point of failure during your risk assessment or business impact analysis, then you have to define how you're going to avoid these kind of potential problems. 6.6, providing financial resources, and these are the resources that are needed in case you have a disruption, and then if you have to make some emergency purchases. And then recovery strategies for individual activities. This is typically where you create separate documents, separate strategies for each of your activities, and then put them as appendices to this general strategy. Okay, section 7 is about strategy for third-party risks. So how do you actually deal with the risks related to suppliers and partners? Risk treatment plan. This is where you define how you're going to implement the security controls in your company. So who is in charge of them? What is the deadline? What is the budget for them? And so on. Testing, monitoring, and reporting. So how are you going to supervise the implementation of this whole strategy? Validity and document management. So who is in charge of these documents? When is it valid from? How often it needs to be updated, and so on. And then appendices. So any appendices you have to list here. Okay, now let's go for this main part of the document. So purpose, scope and users. And you will notice that this template here has these square brackets where you have to fill out something. So in this field here, you should simply enter the company name. Let's say that your company's name, Test Incorporated. And then as easy as this, you simply insert whatever is specific for your company and whatever you want to adapt this document for your specific circumstance. Reference documents, as you can see, the reference to DORA, to this CDR. This is the Commission Delegated Regulation, which also specifies, how you need to define this strategy, and also the references to 27001 7001-22-301. And then this section 3 for the support for the business strategy. And here you basically define the ICT risk management framework of the company is designed to fully align with the overall business objectives of, again, you would insert here the company name specified in, and then you simply have to insert which document you actually have for this overall business objectives. And typically you would have these comments also on the side, which would also help you fill this out. So for example, here the comment says, what is the name of the document that specifies business objectives? And then for example, this could be the business plan, business strategy, something like this. Let's say that you indeed have a business plan in your company and you simply replace it like this. So business plan. And here you also have this comment above, which actually provides you a link to the full text of this CDR. So the point of these comments here is that they enable you much more easily to fill out whatever you need to fill out for a particular document. And then you move on. So risk tolerance level and impact tolerance for ICT disruptions. And basically here it's suggested that you actually have these levels defined in the risk management methodology. Again, if you click the link, you will see a comment that helps you actually find this document within DORA Toolkit, and so on and so forth. So basically this is how the document looks like and how you actually fill it out. There are many options that you have to decide upon when writing this document. For example, what are the top level objectives, what are the security measures that you have to implement, and so on. And basically these decisions have to be made by someone from the senior management, and it usually works like this. So the person who is in charge of this strategy, this is usually the Chief Information Security Officer, has to propose all of these things towards the member of the senior management who is a sponsor of cybersecurity and resilience, and then this senior executive has to make these decisions, sometimes alone, sometimes on the board level. Besides these decision-making challenges, other challenges include, convincing this senior executive on why this document is important and why he or she needs to dedicate time to deal with this kind of a document. And also another challenge is simply having time to write this kind of a complex document. Now, when it comes to convincing this person, what you have to explain is that this is the main operational document upon which the company is going to spend money in the next year or so. So it's crucial for senior management actually to participate, and not only participate, but also make some crucial decisions, because this will ultimately reflect not only the budget, but also the risk profile of the company. And to resolve this challenge of having too much to write, I'll show you now how to use Document Wizard from DORA Documentation Toolkit to speed up the writing of this document. Okay, this is how this DORA Documentation Toolkit application looks like once you log in. And when you scroll down to this folder 7, Digital Operational Resilience Strategy, when you open it, you click on the document name and you will start this wizard. And this wizard actually helps you fill out the document in a quicker way, and I'll show you now how this is done. So the wizard asks you questions around who is responsible for what with regards to this document. So what is the name of the person to approve this document? Let's say CEO, this is fine. What is the confidentiality level of this document? Let's say internal use. So I want to change this, let's say, to confidential. Move on to the next step. Who is in charge of reviewing the general cybersecurity objectives? CISO, fine. Who is the job title of the person in charge of managing security in the company? CISO again. And by the way, you will see that most of these fields are already pre-filled, and this is because I use this wizard for other documents in the DORA Toolkit, and then the wizard remembered what I filled out previously, and this is actually how it suggests each time for each next document on what are the most likely things to be entered, and therefore it speeds up the writing of the document. And when you click next, you see already a suggestion here. Of course, I don't have to fill everything out, but if I want to, I can do this. What is the job title of the person in charge? You already here have a suggestion on who this might be. So let's say this is the CTO, and move on next. Let's skip this one. This is fine. Next. And then when you actually reach the end of this wizard, you can download the document in the Word format on your disk. So let's click the download, and you will see that it's created within a couple of seconds. Okay, now once it's created, you simply click on it and you actually open it here. Now you will notice that this downloaded document is slightly different from what I've shown you before, because this is already filled out through the wizard. So you already see here this logo, which I, by the way, uploaded also previously when I started using this application. It also inserted the company name. It also inserted here the approver. If you remember, this is something that we entered through the wizard. Also the confidentiality level, as you can see, it's confidential. It's not internal use as was initially suggested through the wizard. You also have the company name and the confidentiality level in the header. And when you scroll down, you will see also that it entered some information directly into the document. So company name and so on. So basically this is how it actually helps you fill out this document in a much quicker way. Hope this was helpful, and to see this digital operational resilience strategy for yourself, sign up for a free trial of DORA Documentation Toolkit. Click the link in the description below below, and you'll be able to see a free demo of this document, but also of other documents from this toolkit, and you'll also be able to try how this document wizard works. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos every week. Thanks for watching!